Well, let's pull up Dan speaking about the secondary, because he also praised who they have and the amount of depth they have. And we're going to get to some player interviews later in the show. But here's Dan Campbell on this Lions secondary.
You feel like you guys are kind of wide open and figuring this thing out in terms of what the best way to deploy everybody is?
Yes. It's a great place to be in. It's a great place to be in. We have so many options right now, so much competitiveness. AG and we're talking about it again. AG and I were the other day. Brad and I are talking about it every evening. I mean, it's like, the talent level, the competitiveness, the versatility. Like, honestly, we have no idea who our starting lineup is going to be right now. And it's exciting. It's so good. Like, there's no telling who's going to be our outside corners, who's going to be our nickel, who's going to be our safeties. I mean, this thing is wide open across the board. And it's going to be great to let these guys compete and just go after it and see who goes and is going to be the most reliable guys for us, most dependable. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and he's not wrong. The amount of depth they have and hearing, by the way, I listened to the player interviews. Amik Robertson, I'm in love with him. He's an absolute dog. And he's got that versatility to play in the slot, play nickel, and play on the outside. He's a competitor. I think the secondary, not just the secondary, but that cornerback room, they were moving things around. They had Terry on at CB1 during OTAs. They had Carlton at CB1. They had Khalil Dorsey at CB2. They're just like moving guys around, just trying things. Hopefully, the Khalil Dorsey thing, don't look too much into it. Or Kindle Vildor, rather, don't look too much into it. But, man, they got some guys, man, that – and it's not about – I saw a comment today on a video I posted recapping some of minicamp, just what I read. And someone brought up, I was talking about how Branch could be moved back to safety. And they're like, I don't know why Jeff always says he's moving back to safety. I think Branch is great in the slot. He's great at nickel, but I think if you want to get your best players on the field, you might have a situation where Branch is playing safety. If you want to get a Meek in the slot and you want to have Carlton and Terron Arnold, that's how I looked at it. But what'd you guys make of the video?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, the one takeaway I have is essentially coming out of all of this. It's the conversation we've had as soon as the draft was done. It's these guys are going to compete. And if you watch some of Amik Robertson's conversations today at the press conference, like he just keeps saying like, hey, we're just going to like, we have so many good players in this secondary. It's essentially just iron sharpening iron. And that's all it comes down to. It's like these guys are already good. Like the reports out of camp today and the docs in the chat, I'm sure he could tell you, the defense is dominating the offense. And that's the thing to where it's like your offense has been your bread and butter the last 2 seasons. And I know it's just camp, so we don't want to take too much out of it. And we want to wait till training camp and preseason and the season. But your defense is starting to take a step forward, it feels like, throughout these mandatory mini camps and OTAs. And now you have this secondary that last year, that was your problem the last 2 or 3 years, is you had no secondary. And now all of a sudden, Brad Holmes says, hey, I'm going to bring Amik in. And now I'm not just going to bring Amik in. I'm going to go draft 2 guys in the first and second round. And I'm going to have, obviously, Brian Branch. And we're going to go trade for Carlton Davis. Like, we're going to make this as hard as possible for this secondary to go out there and get on the field. And that's just going to make this secondary that much better. And you still have Iffy and Kirby. And now you have Brandon Joseph who's starting to get in the mix. And, like, you're just starting to add these pieces. And now that you have 6, 7, 8 guys back there who are all elite, not elite, but, like, great football players. And they're just going to go at each other's heads, and it's going to make each other better. That's what you saw today in the minicamp, was like this secondary dominated. Like that was the story of today at minicamp, was this secondary. And Dan Campbell, before they even went on the field, spoke about how he's so excited to see these guys and who comes out on top with these positions. He said he has no idea who's going to play any position. Like, yeah, we could sit here and break it down. He said he's moving everyone around. Amik is like, I'm ready to play anywhere you want. Like, that's the mindset that makes me like, here we go. Like, this secondary might be one of the best in the NFL, just based off them bringing these guys together and saying, like, it's like, what's that? You just throw like a Lions, and you throw like a steak in the middle, and just winner gets the steak. Like, throw these guys in there, and like, who the best get out. That's what they've done, and it actually might work out for the better for this team.
Well, and here's what I think about the secondary. We can't obsess too much on who's starting and who's not, because there's going to be a lot of guys that play snaps. Even if, let's say, Branch and Iffy, for example, start, or for example, Iffy and Kirby are starting at safety, and then you have Branch at nickel, and Amik's not starting. They're always going to be able different packages to get these guys out on the field. So I don't want anyone to overreact to who's playing, who's starting, who's not. And John brought that up on the show too, and it's a great point because they have so many guys that are capable that there are. Besides, obviously Carlton, he's going to be playing. He's CB1 and Terrion, but they'll be interchangeable parts. That I just think when you have that much depth, sometimes you got to ride the hot hand. If someone's playing really well, he's going to play more. And I think they have capable guys. Like Amik was a starter last year, and they have multiple starters at safety, and they have Terrion, who's a first-round pick, and Carlton, who's a proven CB1. Like they just have, and then Mosley, who he's kind of a wild card to me. They just have a lot of guys that, I think the secondary, and we'll get to it in a little bit here, like you said, Booner, the secondary was locked down, man. I mean, they were playing well. And that I think I don't know if it was Dorsey or Vildor who had a pick, but even those guys, they were, and I know I get pajamas. I don't want to
contagious though. Like that.
But the secondary, man, no, they're getting that confidence up. That's really what it is playing corner. If they're playing with confidence, this is going to be a dangerous secondary.
Am I good, fellas? Can you hear and see me clear?
You're good now.
The one thing that I'm interested to see, especially the fact that the Rams are week 1, is I would not be surprised at all if week 1 it was Carlton Davis, Emmanuel Mosley, and Amik Robertson. Because if you want to start week 1 off, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, well, guess who was playing for the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC West against Cooper Kupp twice a year? Emmanuel Mosley. And I think he's got a lot to prove. And we already saw with these rookies, they're going to breathe regardless. But here, let me give me my Wi-Fi fix, fellas. You guys keep cooking.
Yeah.
I will say this too, just
go ahead.
real quick. Like when you do think about this, like hold on a sec. The Terrion Arnold thing. I don't know. I lost track of what I was going to say, and then I got it. I was like, oh, here we go, boy. No, because Klotz went out, and then I was like, no, the Terrion. Like, I don't even know if Terrion Arnold is a full go right now. But like, not even having a guy like you said, these guys are. It's they're in pajamas practicing right now. So in the fact that you have the competitiveness this early with that secondary right there, to me shows that when the pads get put on and training camp comes around and the season comes around, think about how much more these guys are going to compete together. And it all starts. And I'm interested to hear your kind of point of view on this as well. But I feel like the whole defense, especially in today's NFL, like passing defense to me is number one. Like, yeah, you want to get to the quarterback. You have these quarterbacks now in the NFL, like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen's, but like passing defenses will make or break seasons and games. Like if you don't have a secondary out there, you're not going to win a football game because it is a passing league now. And like Alex Anzalone said it today when he spoke with the media, was like, this is a passing league. In the last couple of years, he was like, it was very well known that we needed to upgrade in the secondary and at corner. And he said, Brad went out and he addressed the holes in that, and he addressed it big time by taking a first rounder, a second rounder, and Carlton Davis and Amik. Like, and he says, like, as a linebacker, that helps them out that much more, like more than people even realize how much a great secondary will help out the guys up front. So like they addressed that, and I think like you're going to start seeing like what is the saying, the fruits of the labor as soon as the season comes around with these guys, because you just upgraded your secondary to be potentially one of the best in the NFL, and that's gonna be a game changer.
You know what I think about Rakestraw, and I thought about this today because he's been limited, and I don't have an issue with that because we kind of knew what to expect when he was drafted. I don't know if I know people we had the conversation. Could he be in the slot? I don't think you'll see Rakestraw, to be honest, in the beginning. I don't think you'll see him for probably a bit of time because these reps are so important right now, and he's getting reps. He's out there, but he's limited, and he's not participating with the ones and playing like with Terrion Arnold, for example. I just think you got to understand, like the Lions are so patient with a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, who was a tremendous player and could have played right away. How do you handle a guy like Rakestraw who's kind of slowly coming along? Like, I think it'll take some time before you see Rakestraw in the season. Like, I think he'll have to earn that. I don't think I think Terrion's out there week 1 in some capacity. I don't think Rakestraw is.
No, I'm kind of with you essentially because like the room's stacked. Not just the corner room, but the safety room. Now you have Brandon Joseph. Like you talked about, okay, we can move Brian Branch to safety because that might be where he's best at. But what happens if, say, a Brandon Joseph comes in and he's, hey, we need to get this guy on the field. He's playing extremely well right now. And I know it's crazy to think because he's undrafted. He's an undrafted free agent, and you're sitting there, you're like, how did he? if you heard Brad talk about him today, Brandon Joseph seems like a guy who's going to have an opportunity to get some snaps, and you still have Kirby and Iffy. So it's like, all right, what do you do with Branch at that point? He obviously he's going to be in one of those. So someone's going to get left out, and it's not a bad thing. It's because it's just there's going to be guys that get beat out because you have such a deep room, and the other guys are going to get opportunities because let's just say what it is. There's going to be injuries throughout the season and even in training camp and in preseason. So guys are going to have opportunities. If I had to pick a guy who would say, yeah, maybe it's better to kind of say, hey, sit out. Let's get you to develop a little bit more, like get used to the NFL. Let's get you kind of more reps and get you going because, we still have a guy here like Amik Robertson who has the, he's done this already. Brian Branch, who's been doing this for a whole year already. I would have to say Rakestraw is that guy.
I see a season for Rakestraw. Like if you tell me how his season goes, he'll play special teams. He'll be out there. But in terms of playing corner or being in the secondary and playing snaps, meaningful snaps, I think it's going to take a handful of weeks. But and that's with him improving and showing in practice that like he's ready, and honestly, there's a lot of depth. I mean, Brandon Joseph, I'm glad you brought him up because Dan Campbell mentioned it today that last year he wanted to bring Brandon Joseph up. He was showing tremendous improvement. They just weren't able to do so. And Brandon Joseph, like I know he was undrafted, but guys, there's a lot of productive players in this league that are undrafted. Like that shouldn't, hinder.
What's the percentage? Like 30 or 40% of players?
It's a decent amount. I don't know if it's that much, but there is a good percentage. Like honestly, Boone, if you go through Pro Bowlers, there's probably a couple that are undrafted. Honestly, but you look at a guy like Brandon Joseph, dude, Notre Dame guy, but I think
11.
I think he went to Northwestern. 11%. That's still a good. That's
starters. 11% of starters.
But when he was at Northwestern, I mean, he was productive. And I know Klotz knows, he knows probably a lot more about Brandon Joseph, but they love him. And he's got now a year to develop. I think he's good depth. Like, I'm going to be honest, even though CJ Moore is he's a special teams savant, Brandon Joseph, I think, he's a better player right now. If you're talking about backup safety, like Jeff Risdon wrote about this, in terms of having a true cover, a cover safety, someone who thrives in coverage, and they didn't have Kirby out there. Obviously, he's dealing with an injury. But Brandon Joseph, he had a pick today too. Like he's impressive.
So
I think as training camp, that's another guy to pay attention to.
Real quick, too, Klotzy, just let's call a spade with Brad Holmes in the safety room. He's found guys late in the draft, whether it's late in the draft or UDFAs, like Kirby Joseph, Iffy Melifonwu, and now you could say Brandon Joseph. Like that's one position. And even if he's moved guys around a little bit, that's been a position that's been successful. And the fact that they're able to look at this and say, hey, we think Brandon Joseph can be a dude. Like the fact they're able to say that puts a lot, like it kind of gives it a little bit of respect because you do have guys like Kirby Joseph and Iffy in the building like that.
I'm just laughing at Klotz.
Did we lose Klotzy? That smile? I don't know
if he liked that Brandon Joseph comment. I think he did. But
doesn't that show a lot though with Brandon Joseph? Like you have those safeties in the building, Brian Branch, Iffy, and Kirby, and they're still like saying like, "Hey, Brandon Joseph's been showing out. Like he's standing out." And you have those safeties in the room. It's interesting.
Well, let's listen to Amik Robertson because I have this clip from the press conference today, and it's essentially Amik Robertson on his ability to play multiple positions and kind of his versatility. So let me get this loaded up for you guys and we could play it because I think you guys are going to love what he said in this video. I do. And this is a great clip. I listened to the whole thing and I've never really heard like Amik really speak. Like he hasn't really spoken a lot. I know he had his introductory press conference, but it was nice to hear his perspective. So here's Amik Robertson on just his versatility.
You can play a lot of different stuff, and does that kind of speak to that compete level?
I mean, in his most, in the most humblest way, man. I think, overall, I'm a football player, so whatever they need me in, nickel, corner, I could put myself in a position to make plays, and that's what they expect, from me. That's why I'm here, So whatever they need me to do, man, that's what I'm gonna do.
How would they split your time? Is there a place where they apparently feel more comfortable with you than another?
Nah, you heard the GM say, when they first got me, they saw me play nickel, but what opened their eyes is when they saw me at corner as well, So, like I said before, wherever they put me on the field, I'll be successful because at the end of the day, I'm a football player, and that's what I push myself to be each and every day.
For a guy who's
He's a dog.
I'm a fan.
He's
I am a big fan.
They set him up with that question too, where they were like, I don't know who, I forgot who asked the question, but they're like, you have a preference? Mm-mm. I just want to be out there.
They asked him a couple times too.
Yeah, they tried to, because that's the door opening for him to be like, well, I like to play more at nickel, or I like to play outside. He's like, I'm a football player. That's what I am. Love Amik, man. He's a dog.
I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think the competition that I'm going to be excited to watch all camp is between him and Ennis Rakestraw, because I think if you watch Ennis Rakestraw, he's just made to play the nickel position. I think with how physical he is, with being able to impact the run, it's going to be interesting. But Amik, I don't see a way that Amik does not start week 1, because I think he's a guy that you can go out there and you can trust him to just be able to blend with this unit. And he's going to be a guy that, he's 5'9", but he plays like he's 6'1". So when they put him on the outside, which I'm sure will happen to some points, I'm not going to be panicking. And that's the exact opposite of last year. When you saw the corners last year, Amik Robertson compared to Vildor, compared to Akuda, compared to Jerry Jacobs, levels above him. So to have him in the roster, and then you talk about, when you talk about at the end of the season, he could be your 4th best corner. It's an exciting conversation to have, and it's one that I'm excited to watch play out.
Yeah, he 5'9". I don't even care. He got a lot of heart. Plays with heart.
All heart.
Yeah, that's
5'9" heart.
Players that have faced a lot of adversity and they've been able to overcome it and be who they are. And he obviously earned a pretty good contract. I don't count him out. I could see him, and I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, how he's the guy that, like, I think people are sleeping on a little bit. I can't wait till training camp, because I think that's going to be, you're probably going to see more of that, like more of, Amik Robertson showing out, making plays. And he's very selfless. Like, he even brought up in the interview, we don't have the clip, but when I watched it, and this is what stood out to me, like the character side, when they asked him, because, and I listened to Shannon Sharp talk about this a lot, because Shannon, he mentioned before how when he was a rookie, he had a vet tell him the wrong route, and he ran the wrong route because they were competing for a spot on the roster. And he learned that day, like, I'll never do that to another player. I'll always help him. Like, that guy literally tried to get him cut.
That's crazy.
And that stuck with me, and I always use that. And that's why when they asked him, like, what about the secondary room? Like, are you guys competing? Like, how's it? And he's like, no, we're all trying to help each other. And I'm like, see, like,
which helps elevate.
Yeah, that's a good thing, man. Not every team has that, by the way. There's teams where guys are coming at each other's throats trying to get a roster spot, and I know they know that, but like this, even though they're deep, man, they're all trying to make each other better. That's what you're trying
to elevate everyone together, like help each other. Which that room, like with Amik, I do remember when he said that today, Jeff. It's so like they're like, yeah, that's huge to have those guys being like, hey, we're a family, we're a team, we want to make each other better because we all have the same goal in mind. Now, at the end of the day, like they're still going to compete for the spot and they're going to go out there and be competitive. That makes it even more competitive, in my opinion, that, hey, like we're side by side just going at it, like mano a mano. Here we go. What I think, though, Amik, I want to know what you guys think, but like I see Amik, this happening for him. He's going to be the guy in the secondary that's just your Swiss Army knife, to where there's going to be a lot of, like, we know what it is. There's going to be injuries throughout the season. Guys are going to go out for a game or two. Guys are going to get moved around. There's going to be matchups. Things are going to happen. Amik, at every point, is going to play a different position. He's going to be moving around a ton. That's how he's going to stay on the field all year. That's kind of how I see it. And obviously, you don't want injuries or anything like that, but he's just a guy that's going to be able to, he's a vet. He's been in the league now. He knows what it takes to compete in all these different positions. He's going to be a guy that goes out there and it's, hey, Carlton's down for a week. All right, we got to move guys around. All right, Meek's able to move around. Like, without even a question, we're going to be able to move this guy anywhere he wants, and like very, very reliable. And that's kind of how I see Amik Robertson. Because like Jeff's like Klotz, but when you were off too, like Jeff even said, like he thinks Ennis Rakestraw is going to take a couple weeks to get in.
Yeah.
So okay, you have Amik there at the nickel. All right, so when Rakestraw, maybe his time comes up, all right, we can move Amik somewhere else. If someone's struggling or something's happening, like Amik's a guy that like consistently he's going to be good, and you're never going to have to worry about him not playing hard and not going out there and working. And it's like he's going to be able to play a very, very versatile player.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you look at, he really took off when Antonio Pierce took charge of that, just like pretty much every player. But I mean, you look at
Mhm.
Antonio Pierce, and then you look at the style he coaches. You even just look at Aaron Glenn; it's very similar. And then you look at who Amik had to man up on within that division. You got the Chargers, so you had Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. You go to Denver. I know Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy aren't elite wide receivers, but those are twice a year. Those are guys that can definitely get you. And then who else? The Chiefs was Rashee Rice. So, and if you watch, Rashee Rice got put on his ass by
Yeah.
by Amik. So it's going to be,
Yeah.
like I said, it's interesting to see where they put him, because I don't think maybe week 1 he's starting outside in front of Terrion, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to be starting in front of Terrion for long. If he does, I think he's going to be playing a lot of nickel. But to Booner, your point, I think Brian Branch is the ultimate Swiss Army knife of this defense, but what he does is more in the safety room, right? Like he's going to do strong safety, free safety, and probably a little bit of nickel. But with Amik, you can move him inside and outside with corner. So he's definitely going to be a nice little chess piece that Brad Holmes and Aaron Glenn, they're going to be able to take advantage of, especially with this division and all the wide receivers.